In this video, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the game book 1 and 2 in the stake system. Stake 1, London After Nightfall, and 2, Bride of the Creature. These game books are inspired by Victorian horror, and now this one has a big bat, so you probably know what the big problem is, and Bride of the Creature probably again that tells you what the mystery is about. Stake is a secret organization that investigates supernatural crimes in Victorian England, and you can play as a single agent, which is how I played. You can play them solitaire, or you can even play them cooperative with players working together with multiple characters. Now, in this video, I'm gonna first tell about the game system, and then a little bit more about the individual books, because there are several things that are quite unusual here. First, there are files that you may want to print out. For example, you got the character sheet, and I printed out one just for historical record, because then I like to write down my own. I've been rereading the Sherlock Holmes canon, so actually every time I played this game, I created a character based on that. Like you see here, I play with Irene Adler, John Clay Reformed. It's fun to do it that way, because then I can also actually design the character with abilities and stats similar to how I think makes sense based on the literary precedent. Each character will have 3 main characteristics: acuity, courage, and tact. You all start with 0, and then you can change them around, giving them positive and then negative values until you have a combination that you like, and that adds up to 0. So +1, +1, -2, that makes sense. And you need to have at least a value above 1 and 1 below, above 0 and 1 below 0 to play the game. You have portraits that, again, you can print, and you can select one that you think matches the character that you're playing. Abilities, you will choose one from a list. Then we have will, that you need to maintain your composure under the terrible mental strain of the kind of things that you're going to face. Health, suffice to say, when it goes down to 0, it's bad. Stress, you want it to keep under 10 or you lose the game. Also, you want it to keep it not higher than your will. And then you will keep track of time as it goes. You start with an item, and then you will also collect other items during the game. Usually, you cannot have more than 4 with you, so inventory management is an important element there. What is also peculiar is this game uses fudge/fate dice, and I happen to have a red and a black set, so I think they really work for the Victorian horror element here. You can use regular dice, of course, as long as you stipulate 1, 2 is a minus, 3, 4 is a blank, and 5, 6 is a plus. But if you have fudge dice around, it's just a lot more fun that way. When you have to take a random check, very often will be roll a DF, and there will be 3 possible outcomes based on the 3 outcomes indicated on the die. Now, remember those abilities there. Very often the book will tell you to take a test in one of those skills. Suppose I have to take a test in tact. Then my value, I simply use dice, and I write my value in dice. That would be a +1. If I had to take a test in courage, then that's what I do. So I will probably have some modifiers. Again, let's go back to the one in tact. Then after you set that up for a standard test, you roll 3 dice. And you look at the result of which you have the most. So the possible results, plus, minus, or blank. Right now, the outcome of my check is I got a blank. You can also spend will to change a blank into a plus, or 2 wills. Suppose that was my outcome. 2 wills to change a minus into a plus. What if there is a tie? Usually when there's a tie between 2 results, you will choose the better one. So I can choose the plus. Unless my stress is higher than my will, then I have to take the lower. So if my stress was a 7 right now, then my outcome as of now would be blank. And of course, plus is better than blank, and blank is better than minus. And the text and the book will tell you what happens then. A lot of interesting decisions that come out of that idea. The books are also unusual for their structure, which is partially branching, traditional branching structure of a lot of game books. Then there is a sandbox element in which you can travel around the story world more freely. And then again, it goes back to a branching section. In Stake, again, you're looking for a vampire. Sorry for the spoiler. You're looking for a vampire. It tells you so at the beginning. There's a vampire in London, and the vampire is like challenging the police with a letter that offers some clues. And also, for London After Nightfall, you will need to print some portraits of characters, and you may want to sleeve them like I did, or in any case, mount them anyway so you don't see through. Then you will shuffle the deck and remove one card without looking at it, and that is the prime suspect. So the investigation starts, and then you will have the sandbox section of the game book in which you travel around London, visiting different locations indicated by those numbers and referenced by those descriptions there. And what you're trying to do is, as you resolve those encounters, to look for effects that let you draw and reveal cards, because now you know that that is not your prime suspect. Then you can look at the entry indicated there to represent a conversation with that character, although you know that the character, knowing who the character is and not the prime suspect, is good enough. There is stuff that may happen when you talk to people, as it often happens when you talk to people. So, as for the sandbox, you're gonna have until the morning, and each location that you visit takes an hour. So keep track. Okay, now it's 9 p.m. and I'm gonna go and visit. Say I'm gonna go to the Baldwin Card Club, 47. On my way there, I need to resolve a random encounter. I'm not going to give you spoilers, so I'll just show you that there's an entire section with random encounters labeled by the time. 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and so on and so forth. I just keep a bookmark in there. And so I decide to go to the Baldwin Club. It's 9 p.m. I look at that section. I roll a die, and then I look up the random event, or 3 per hour, that corresponds to that. Then I go to section 47, read the section, do what it says, and then I decide for another location. Now I want to go to the St. Paul's Cathedral, for example. St. Paul's Cathedral, 17. But on my way there, now it's 10 p.m., I resolve that encounter for 10 p.m. So that's how the sandbox works. And at the end of the night, well, you'll see what happens at that point. Hopefully you know who the prime suspect is. And you take it from there, because then you're back to a more traditional branching game book system. Bride of the Creature. I don't think I'll shock you if I tell you that you're traveling to Castle Frankenstein, and that's what you're going to explore for your sandbox section. Again, you have a branching tree to get there, then the sandbox, and then there may be another linear section. Here, the locations are divided into interior and exterior, you see from the E and the I. And you have 6 of each that you can visit. You can visit 6 interiors and 6 exteriors. Again, you're keeping track of how many you're visiting, and that is your track there, your timer there. And do what happens. I don't want to tell you too much about it. So, in general, this is how these game books work. I like these games quite a bit, and I like the fact that they rely on a fresh and different game system. it's a sign of one of the advantages we have from Gamebooks now, targeting adult hobbyists as opposed to casual teens and tweens like back in the day, because now there are chances that somebody will already have these dice at home or will be willing to purchase them to buy to play the game as written in this very atmospheric and interesting way. So nice to see a new game system for Gamebooks, and I like it very much. There are really a lot of interesting decisions there when it comes to allocation of resources, to switch a symbol from another, because there are just slightly different things that you can do from, adding, I spend a magical potion to add a +1, so from 6 I can get to 8. But here, depending on the die roll, well, it's worth turning a blank into a plus, because then it's giving me that other thing. They're just manipulating the dice, okay, it's just a little more fluid and smooth somehow, or creates more decisions there. I really like the sandbox system where you go to different places, resolve different locations. It kind of reminded me of my own 4 Against the Great Old Ones, so you know that I like it, so I was happy to see that. If anything, I hope that the next books in the system, they give us that even more, because that's was by far my favorite part. Maybe we can have more of them. Maybe we can have later stake games in which you is entirely sandboxy, but it's another nice way of creating that. In this one, the idea of having basically a different random table for each hour of the night creates a lot of interesting thematic elements, because you really get the sense that as the night progresses, different kinds of events will happen, so that really gives you a strong sense of immersion. Here you have, interior and exteriors that work in different ways. It doesn't quite have the same overarching idea. Each also has a mini adventure at the end, kind of like a bonus story. And I want to show you just one of those illustrations, because there's also another interesting mechanic here. Sometimes you will see an image that is under a grid, and the different columns and rows of the grid are marked, and so there are different effects. Say maybe I'm trying to hit that person, I choose where I should hit them. Again, you direct your agents in different areas of the grid, maybe because you picked up some clues, so you know where certain things should be. That's another interesting little puzzle there. So a lot of nice touches to make these stories appealing to the player, to the hobby gamer in all of us. So Gamebooks done right, because the narrative element is very strong and the game element is also very interesting. Maybe the replay value is not huge, because ultimately each is a specific case, and once you solve it, there are possibly fewer reasons for interest to go back to it. But maybe you can play it, you can direct it as a role-playing adventure or a role-playing light for your friends. You can do something like that. But once you go through the night, the first night, or you will see a third of all the random events here. You will see a lot of what happens in the sandbox element. And so, not huge replay value, but with each book, you're going to spend a good evening rolling dice, creating interesting characters, experiencing an interesting story that gets it right, both from the point of view of the atmosphere and the point of view of the game system, which to me is pretty good. Pretty good. So stay tuned, because at some point there will be another video in which I will talk about the next 3 books in the line. There are 3 more. I hope the writer, the author, writes more, because I think this is a great system and I had a lot of fun playing these adventures.